Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob Licklider here, and I'm back, I guess, with a video. Yeah, it's been a long time, but Doctor Who is actually coming back in about a week, so I thought I would give some thoughts. I was originally going to do some thoughts about what was maybe my thoughts going into Russell T Davies' second era of Doctor Who and the 60th anniversary. But last night, the BBC's Children in Need telecast happened, and as is sort of grand tradition for Doctor Who, we have a 5 minute little special minisode episode called Destination Skaro, written by Russell T Davies, directed by Jamie Donahue, and as well as 10 minutes of behind the scenes footage, which was very, very exciting, and of course, Twitter discourse. So I thought I'd give some thoughts. Um, in terms of the Children Need specials, it's a tiny 5 minute special. It's not attempting to be some big grand epic or anything, but it is has some very nice implications and some interesting ideas for Doctor Who as a whole and where the show is going to be going. So, Destination Skaro. I'll start with some things that I like. You can watch the special on YouTube. Um, the Doctor Who channel has uploaded all 5 minutes of the special on YouTube, as well as I believe it is on the BBC iPlayer, as well as the Doctor Who Unleashed, which is the behind the scenes program special, is specifically on iPlayer. Now, this special is a tiny little 5 minute comedic scene set before Genesis of the Daleks, where Davros, played by Julian Bleach, returning to the role, is explaining the Mark III travel machines to another Khalid officer, Mr. Castavillian, played by Mwan Rizwan. He gets called away by Niter, and the Doctor swoops in, breaking this claw arm on the Dalek and replacing it with a plunger. That's it. It's a fun little 5 minutes of inconsequence. I think the performances in it are quite nice. Tennant is good. Mwan Rizwan is very, very fun, playing sort of just the comedy. And of course, Julian Bleach as Davros is a fairly good performance. Now, the big controversy is that Davros here has been taken out of the wheelchair and removed the facial scarring, and Russell T Davies, in comments about the character, said that this was let's see Davros through a 2023 lens, essentially, and that has caused discourse. As someone who's physically disabled myself, I can see where the negative stereotypes of Davros as a character come from, and how it does play into ableist tropes. Even if the rather strong argument is that Davros's wheelchair is specifically an inspiration for the Daleks themselves in the text of Genesis of the Daleks, I think the discourse is largely being a bit combative, especially because it's on Twitter, which is not a great platform for any sort of discourse because of the limited character count, as well as the general as well as the general tendency to read things in the worst possible light because of the platform. That's something that's generally on social media is an issue, but it's also very much a problem. This is all something where, let's be honest, some people who are actively deriding change, I should say, are definitely ableist. I'd argue that it's probably best for Davros as a character to be retired because, well, in his last appearance in The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, Stephen Moffat played into some very different ableist tropes and included some very ableist jokes that are kind of uncomfortable to watch. Whereas here it feels more like Davies is actively trying to avoid playing into certain tropes, even if that's messing with the canon. And I actually will have to applaud him for trying to learn. Doctor Who has actually quite a long history, as with any media, of playing into tropes that are problematic and show things in a wrong light. Now, Doctor Who, I will say, even in the classic series, has had a better track record than others, partially due to just the wide variety of writers and the creative teams. some of the earliest disabled representation on Doctor Who was written by Dalek creator Terry Nation himself in The Dalek Invasion of Earth, with a wheelchair-bound hero who sacrifices himself. But also in Nation's very next story, The Chase, Nation writes a character for one episode called Morton Dill, who is a comedy character who, if John Peel's novelization of the original script is to be believed, is meant to be portrayed as mentally ill, though that is, again, bringing in a novelization from a script, so it may not be Nation's intent. As well as Nation writing Genesis of the Daleks in the mid-70s, where, in the Philip Hinchcliffe era, where one of the sort of key issues of that era is, in fact, the fact that that is an era that was playing into a lot of those ableist tropes with villains like Magnus Greel and Morbius. Writer Robert Holmes, who was script editor at the time, would massively play into those tropes with the character of Sheriff Jack in 1984's The Caves of Androzani. These are tropes that have been played with. That is not to say you can't enjoy those episodes of Doctor Who. They're largely episodes that I adore. They're fantastic, but, they are... Media is going, from any perspective, is going to be limited by the perspective of those who make it. Doctor Who was largely written by straight, middle-class white men in the late 20th century. And I think seeing Davies at least attempt this is coming from a good place, even if the character of Davros is obviously more complex than that. I think people in the discourse do need to listen to disabled fans more when they say they have issues with these, and have that discussion, and largely take those discussions off of public-facing Twitter, because Twitter's not a great place to be educated on those issues, nor is it a great place to see each other's views, especially for the majority of fans who I'd argue in both sides are generally trying to understand each other, and not just people who are actual bigots. I will say the few things that I also really did like about the special, Jamie Donahue, who will be directing 2 episodes of Series 14 with Shurigawa, directed this 5-minute episode because it was produced, in fact, a year after the specials we will begin seeing next week. If this is an indication of Donahue's directive style for Doctor Who, he looks like a fantastic choice. I love some of the angles, even for this comedy sketch. Really, I think the thing that's actually most egregious about this sketch is the choice of music. It's Murray Goldbach doing comedy music, and in my mind, I actually have some issues with Gold scores in general. Gold scores, specifically between Series 7 and 10, had this tendency to be integrated into the episodes to be very blaring, and so music in storytelling is largely supposed to guide your emotions, but the way that gold scores were often integrated, especially during the back half of the Moffat era, from that 2013 to about to the end of his initial run as composer, got too manipulative, and I have a feeling that might be what's happening here, and I dislike it. I do apologize. It's not great. But yeah, I do think this Destination Skaro is a very interesting little special. I think the discourse surrounding it should be maybe taking a moment to rein people in and maybe have those conversations somewhere else and not in such a public-facing manner, to sort of learn. I think it's also, this was a 5-minute special with 10 minutes of behind the scenes, where one thing that Russell Davies said is, I'd argue is more positive than anything, that he wants to be aware of the tropes that he's using, tropes that he fell into in his first run. I will be back with when the actual specials air. I'm going to be trying at least to get those videos out within a day of the specials airing. I can't make any promises, especially since the first special is coming out Thanksgiving weekend. If you like what I do, subscribe here. In the links in the description below, I will have links to Blood Donut Studios, where I have a comics podcast called Fresh Face Comics, where my friend Joey Morgan makes me read comics, as well as my blog, where I talk about Doctor Who, science fiction, and a bunch of other things. So it's great that Doctor Who's being back, and I will see you next time.